Hey guys, Hayden here again from Alarm System Store, and today we're going to be going over PGM setup on the IQ Pro system. So I have a little setup here, and I'm basically going to demo all the different types of PGM setups that you can use. I have a door contact here because we're going to need that to trigger a couple of the PGM types. There's a little piezo here, and that's going to sound off for a couple seconds once we set it up. And that'll be the PGM operating, basically, so you guys can see how it works. And I also have a keypad connected so that we can use some of the command triggers. So to jump right in, on the IQ Pro, once you get your installer app connected to the system, it'll pull up your dashboard here, and to get to your PGM outputs, you basically just go into the config section, click on installation, devices, and then PGM outputs. So once you get to the PGM outputs section, you'll basically see 4 different programmable output options you can select from. Those directly translate to the PGMs on the main board here. So we have 4 PGMs on the main board, we have 4 in the programming. Now if you add additional modules such as the HSM 2204 or 2208, which are the high current and low current PGM expanders respectively, you will see additional PGMs pop up here. Basically, every time you add one of those modules, it will add the additional PGMs that come with it into this section. So you'll have, 5 through 8 or whatever the case might be. From here, we basically just have to select which PGM we're going to be setting up. So I have this piezo connected to PGM 1, so we're going to select PGM 1 right there. And it's going to show you the parent module for that PGM. So right now it just says panel, and that's talking about the main board of the system, since that is where the PGM is located. So whenever you're, setting up your PGMs, if you have some additional boards that you're working with, just make sure that you have the correct parent module. That way you know exactly that you're on the right PGM, essentially. So you don't have to plug in a name just yet. All you're going to do is click the plus button down here at the bottom, and there's 3 options you can select from. So I'm not going to do the system just yet. I'm going to do that at the end because it takes longer to test and show you guys. So we're going to go over the zone and the command options first. So for zone, basically what that means is you select a zone, and whenever that zone is opened or closed, you can trigger the PGM for a certain amount of time. So once we get in here, we have 4 options that have popped up, and then at the top you can add a name. So I'm going to go ahead and add a name because you have to have one or else it won't let you save it. So zone PGM is all I'm going to call it. Keep it simple. Alright, and then you select the zone that you want to trigger this PGM, and since we only have the one door connected, I just named it door, and it is auto selected because that's the only one available. So make sure the proper zone that you want to trigger this PGM off of is selected there. And then for zone status, you can select whether or not it is going to be opened or closed. So upon opening, it will trigger, or upon closing, it will trigger. So in this case, we have it closed. We want to know when the door is opened, so we will leave that as open. The output type is either going to be normal or inverted. Normal just means that there is no power on the line right now, and when the PGM triggers, it will provide power to the device. If it is inverted, that means it's constantly flowing power, and then it turns off whenever the PGM is triggered. So we're going to leave that normal for this setup. And then the action down here is basically the timer for your PGM. So if you leave that as latching in this scenario, basically what that means is as long as that door is open, that PGM is going to be going off. I don't want that, so I'm going to select timer. So once you select timer, it'll offer 2 options. You can change from seconds to minutes if you want. You can have the PGM go off for up to 360 minutes if absolutely needed. I can't imagine what that would ever be used for, but that is the maximum amount of time you can select. I'm going to leave it on seconds, and I'm going to change it to 1 second because we don't need the sounder going off for very long. So once you're done, just click save until you get back to this page. Now once you're here, you can see that it's back to showing the parent, and then it shows the assigned rules. So it says door, it is a zone trigger. Upon opening, it will perform a normal output action for 1 second. So basically now if I open that door contact, it is going to sound the piezo. So I'm going to cover it a little bit just so it's not quite so loud. but that beep, that was the piezo. So here. As you can see, I'm sure the camera picked that up, but the piezo basically just goes off for 1 second anytime that door contact is opened. So that is the zone trigger. You can set that up for any zone on your system. Generally, you want to use that with, sensors that have a more static state, such as door contacts, because they are very clearly open or closed. If you try to trigger stuff off of like motions, there is a chance that, it may pick up when it shouldn't or not pick up when it should, depending on whether your system's armed and whether it's wireless, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of factors, so it is better to use this type of PGM setup with a static style sensor like a door contact. So moving on from there, to delete this, once you're on this page here, you can't delete it any further back, but if you go into this page, you can just swipe to the left on the actual assigned rule and click delete, and that will remove all PGM programming for that setup. So if I had multiple assigned rules, like if I had this triggering on like 5 different zones, you do have to clear each one of them individually. However, it's pretty easy. Like I said, just swipe, click delete, it'll ask, are you sure? Click yes, you're done. So moving on from there, we're going to go over the command option. So when you click on command, it's going to bring up basically 3 different rules. It's going to have command, and if you open that up, it shows command output 1 through 4. So command output 1 through 4 is an actual physical trigger that you set off yourself. So if you have a DSC keypad like this one, basically everybody should always have output 2 set up as a pre-programmed function of these keypads. But basically when you click that output 2 button on this touchscreen, it activates command output 2. It is basically you telling the system activate that command, and then it does whatever you have it programmed to do. Generally, the reason that output 2 is here is because PGM2 is always used for smoke detectors, whether they're 4-wire or 2-wire. So that is how you set this up so that it resets those upon activating that output 2. However, you can manually activate any of the 4 command outputs on the keypad. If you bring up, like if you have a touch screen, you do have to bring up the keypad, or you can also go into the outputs section right there and you can just manually trigger each one. However, if you have a button style keypad, you'll have to use the keypad sequence, and the keypad sequence for a command output is just *7 followed by whichever of the command outputs you want. So if we select 1 in this case, it's going to tell us that the function is not available because we don't have anything programmed yet. However, once we actually set up the PGM, it will activate that output. So for our programming here, I'm just going to leave that on command output 1, and whenever we trigger that, we want the output type to be normal, so we want power to flow to the device whenever it's triggered. And then for the timer, again, I'm going to set it to 1 second. So once we have our name programmed in here, we can save it. Command PGM. Alright, so now once that's saved, you see the success there. Now we can go and we can actually trigger that command output. So like I said, on this particular keypad, you can select outputs, select command output 1, and you can see the piezo went off just there. Now, like I mentioned, you can also do it through the actual sequence of buttons on the button style keypads. So if you hit *7 1, the piezo goes off as well. So basically, that is a physical trigger that you manually set off yourself through the keypad, and that mainly only applies to the DSC keypads when you're using them with the IQ Pro. The IQ Remote does not have the ability to trigger those command outputs. So now we'll move on to our last PGM setup option, and that is going to be the system option. So system basically is talking about a system state, or an event that happens on the system. So once you get here, you'll have 3 options again. If you select system state, you'll get a list of all the different events that can take place on your system that will trigger a PGM. So you can trigger it off of disarming the system, you can trigger it off of an alarm going off, a fire emergency, a trouble condition, There's a bunch of different options here, but whichever one you select, when that event happens, that is when your PGM will trigger. In our case, I'm just going to leave it on disarm, and we'll leave it normal, and then we'll set it for a 1 second timer again. So save that, then we'll do System State PGM. I spelled it wrong, but it doesn't matter, it's fine. Alright, so now that that is set up, I do have to back out of the app to be able to show you guys this because it won't let me arm otherwise. So give me 1 second, I'm going to go ahead and close the app, then I'll get the keypad ready and get the system armed, and then I'll show you guys what it looks like. Alright, so I backed out of programming, I got the system armed right now. So if I triggered it, it would go off, but basically we're just trying to get a disarm trigger in here. So all I'm going to do is just click that, type in my code, and as soon as I do, that piezo is going to go off for that 1 second. So as you heard, essentially as soon as that system entered the disarmed state, the PGM triggered for the amount of time that we set it up for. So PGMs on this system are pretty straightforward. You just select the PGM you're going to be using. In this case was PGM 1. You set up the trigger for it, whether it's a system state, a specific zone, or multiple zones, or one of those command outputs that I mentioned. And once that event takes place on the system, whether you open a zone or disarm the system or whatever the case, it just performs the action that you set up in the system programming. One thing to remember is if you're, kind of new to this and you just happen to see this video before you see the smoke video, whenever you're setting up smoke detectors, you need to have your output inverted because you want the PGM to be providing power to your smokes at all times, and then you want to set up your reset so that it removes power for 2 to 5 seconds or so. Somewhere in that range is fine. And that way, anytime your smokes are closed because they were triggered, smokes latch closed, so the only way to unlatch them is to depower them. So you trigger that output, whether it's by disarming the system, or you can set up the Command Output 2 here, which is designed for that on DSC keypads. But once you trigger that, it depowers the smokes for the amount of time you set, and then when they boot back up, they will come online again. So overall, it's very simple to set up different PGM types. The only difficult part might just be the fact that the PGMs on this system are negative switching outputs, which means instead of turning on and off the actual power to the device, you're actually switching the ground. Negative switches are confusing, and I don't want to get into that today, but essentially, just remember that your negative wire for whatever device you're trying to power will always go to the PGM terminal itself, and then your power is going to go to the aux2 positive terminal here. Other than that though, that's PGMs in a nutshell on the iQ Pro. Like I said, it's pretty simple. And if you have any questions, by all means leave them down below. If you don't mind, leave a like and subscribe. Catch all of our iQ Pro videos as we make them. Otherwise though, I will catch you guys on the next one.